want to get to this other topic first, because later this afternoon, President Obama, of course, he's going to be outlining what he's going to do to cut the nation's debt. My next guest is Mortimer Zuckerman. He's the chairman and CEO of Boston Properties. And Mort, I know you've been a longtime critic of the president. I think at one point you said that his administration is the most hostile to business that you've seen in decades. What do you hope to see from him that will give him more credibility?
Well, first place, I actually did vote for him, and the Daily News supported him. So I didn't start off as somebody who was
as an Obama
skeptical.
hater.
No. But I think they have had some of the worst policies in economic terms and towards the business community since I've been in business. What I would like to see from him is, since I believe that this fiscal crisis is absolutely literally an existential threat to our economy, I would like to see it be something other than playing politics with the issue, which is what he has done in the past. When he announced the commission of Simpson and Bolt, when they came up with their recommendation, which did advocate roughly $4 trillion in cuts, he basically walked away from it. And I happened to meet with several of the senators, including Democratic and Republican senators, and all of them said that he was just walking away from the very commission he set up. So the question is he going to be serious about this and be constructive and be serious in terms of the amounts that we have to take out of it?
So is it numbers for you? Is it the numbers that you want to hear?
Well, I want to hear whether he's going to deal with Medicare and Medicaid, for example, which are the two drivers of the huge fiscal deficits that we're looking at. And, you know, we don't have to become Greece, but we could face a major economic crisis as a result of you could have a run from the dollar, a run from American credit. You can have interest rates soar. This would be a disaster for the United States and its economy. And the question is he going to be serious about it?
We've had people predict that, in fact, that by 2013 or so, that, we may see a real fiscal crisis.
We don't know. You never know when the crisis happens. You never know. It could happen very quickly. And we are at a point where people can get very concerned about the failure of government to deal with the fiscal debts and the fiscal deficits that we're piling onto this country.
Mort, why won't you give the president an inch, though? I mean, he's hired Bill Daley, for instance. He's got Jeff and Mel. He's trying to put people back to work since January. I mean, well, he's been trying throughout his administration, but why won't you give him an inch?
I'm sorry. I've given him more than an inch, okay? I mean, Bill Daley, I think, whom I know very well, I think is a grown-up and a terrific man. I think Austin Goolsbee is doing a terrific job as the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. The reason why I am concerned is because they've played politics with every issue to a degree that I think is counterproductive to the national interest. And at some point, in my judgment, the better politics are to really attack the problems and not just to play games with them.
So, Mort, if you're concerned about basically the entire future of the American economy, what are you doing with your own investments or with your own money then? I mean, in some ways, do you not want to be in the dollar? Do you want to get out of the bond markets? I'm just curious.
No, to be honest with you, I'm an immigrant to this country, okay? I've had an absolutely wonderful run. I have every reason to be optimistic about this country, and I intend to just play out the game here as long as I possibly can. Although I do say these days that the difference between an optimist and a pessimist when it comes to the economy is that an optimist thinks this is the best of all possible worlds, and a pessimist fears he may be right. I mean,
and you're the pessimist.
I have been the pessimist for the last 3 or 4 years, I have to say, about the direction of the economy, and thank God, because the pessimists have been proven right a lot more frequently than the optimists. And I think we are faced with a really critical situation. I'm not the only one, obviously.
There's several, yes.
Any serious economist will look at it and say, we have a huge fiscal problem. If we go over the edge of the cliff, we may not be able to come back again. We have to look to a political leadership to deal with this issue. It's not going to happen. They're all running for re-election, and if that's going to be the dominant factor, and they take short-term views rather than long-term views, we're going to be in great trouble.
And Mort, you're bearish on the economy, right?
I'm not bearish on the economy. I'm not optimistic about the economy. Okay. I don't see the elements of the economy, not retail sales, frankly, not housing markets, not employment numbers. The employment numbers are much worse than the 8.8%. Let's face it, it's closer to 20% than it is to 8.8%. And it's not improving. And it's not improving in spite of the biggest the largest fiscal stimulus we've ever had, the most stimulative monetary policy, the most stimulative bailout policy, and 20 months past the trough of the recession, we're barely eking out very small gains, and almost all of that gain comes from the federal policies. We can't do that forever. So something is not working in the economy. We have not finished the deleveraging process. The amount of debt that is pressing down on the American consumer, the collapse in housing values, has kept the consumer, frankly, doing very, very little relatively. So we have real problems. And unless we get over this fiscal debt, we could be in for a long period of economic difficulty.
Mort, I want to start off with, in February, I think it was, you wrote this op-ed in the Financial Times. I know you're writing lots of editorials in different newspapers, but this one in particular struck us because you talked about creating jobs, right? And one of the ideas is to invest in infrastructure in order to create jobs. And, you just told me about how we shouldn't spend much more government money to create jobs. And this sounds like a policy that would.
Well, yes, but you have to look at the details of it, okay? This is infrastructure that should be tolled, where the people who use it through tolls will eventually pay for it. So it'll be seen as an investment and not just as an addition to our national debt. And what's more, it stimulates the economy. And everybody in America knows that our infrastructure is in terrible shape, whether it be bridges or highways or airports, you name it, a whole series of things that we should charge the people who use it. So the users over time will pay for it, and therefore there'll be a revenue stream to offset the costs of it. And it is an investment. And it is also a job multiplier rather than a job saver. Because once you invest in these kinds of infrastructure developments, it stimulates a lot of other jobs. So it's about 1.5 to 1.75 jobs for every job that you have in the infrastructure development, as compared to other kinds of job savers, okay, which is what too much of the stimulus program went to. It went to the states, and the states use it to protect the public service unions, okay? That it does save jobs, but frankly, that was the wrong way to invest.
Private jobs. But, infrastructure alone will not recreate the 7 million plus jobs we have lost in this recession, though.
Nothing will create that until you get the economy rolling again, until you get some dynamics into the economy again. And if you're going to have a stimulus that is going to be the best time, I wrote this many times, the best time to do this is right at the very begin, when you can see the economy going off the cliff. And we had the wrong stimulus program, as I wrote then, and we had no real infrastructure program. We had a very small amount of the money going to. So, but whatever it is, we can't wait any longer. We've got to do something about the economy, because frankly, if you listen to those retail sales, as I said, you take out gasoline, and retail sales are very weak, despite the fact that we have the most, again, I'll repeat it, the most stimulative fiscal program, the most stimulative monetary policy, the most stimulative bailout policy, and usually at this time, 20 months or 22 months after the trough of a recession, the economy is growing at 7%. Instead, it's growing at 2%, 2.5%. So there's something fundamentally wrong now in terms of what's going on in our economy.
Mort, you said two things that struck out at me. Number one, you've been writing these editorials and talking about this, in several places. And number two, you've been doing this for several years, even from the beginning when we first talked about stimulus. So why do you think you've been unheard in Washington?
Well, I think they listen to people on an alphabetical basis. You see, with Zuckerman, they just never got around to reading it. Look, I mean, there has been a really extraordinary reaction to the articles that I've been writing, and I have been engaged
from the White House.
Invited, well, not necessarily from the business community. Okay. I mean, including, for example, I did write that article, the first one, on the anti-business attitude of this administration,
and you got
which, frankly, absolutely, and everybody agreed with that from the business world, and over time they changed their views. Bill Daley, for example, is somebody who understands that you want to bring the business community along with you and not have the business community feel that you have a hostile administration, which was the effect.
Does he call you now? Does Bill Daley call you?
We have spoken. I mean, he doesn't call me on a regular basis, but yes, we have spoken, and I have had meetings with him. But, I mean, to me, the central issue now is to make sure that the debt picture and the fiscal deficits do not unravel the whole economy over the next several years. That is a strategic risk to the economy.
Mort, always great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Mortimer Zuckerman, the chairman and CEO of Boston Properties.